So hope everyone's doing well. We're super excited to have this global read here with Lynn Strongin and Danielle Ofri, and we'll begin soon. So we are currently live on Facebook. That's great. And let me share my screen so we can begin this conversation. All right. Welcome everyone to our Global Read webinar series. Today we have the pleasure of listening to poet Lynn Strongin and our facilitator Danielle Ofri. Thank you so much both for being here, for taking this time to share the wonderful work of Lynn. Her last book, KIOSK, is available to purchase anywhere around the world. And I'm very excited to have this conversation going for now. As people might not know this, but Lynn doesn't have a camera right now, and so we'll be listening to her while Danielle is in the conversation. So I leave you both to begin this conversation, and if anybody has questions, you please post them on the chat or in the Q&A section, and we'll go through those at the end of the webinar.
Thank you so much. Are you doing a little PowerPoint first, or?
Sure, I can do it right now. Give me a second. Not this one.
First to make sure.
There you go. So these are some pictures of Lynn. I think we are good to go now. Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you, Philippe. Thank you, Lynn. We're so thrilled to have you all here today. I'm Danielle Ofri. I'm editor-in-chief of Bellevue Literary Review, which is a literary journal. Here's the hard copy version that publishes fiction, poetry, and nonfiction about health, illness, and healing. And we got connected with Lynn because she's a poet who writes a lot about her lifelong connection to polio, and which is why today's seminars is titled Disability and Creativity. We want to look at those, those issues together. And we look forward to your questions. Feel free to throw them in the chat as we talk, and we'll get to them at the end. So Lynn, you had polio many, many years ago, and you were 12 years old at the time. And in fact, it was just a year before the vaccinations came out. It's been
That's right, yeah.
a lifetime. Do you consider yourself recovered from polio?
No, I think it's a lifelong battle. I can't say goodbye to what strikes me every day as harder now that I'll be 85. However, I am more creative than ever, and that is the blessing in very deep disguise.
Why can't you say goodbye to it?
Well, because every time I go to a store, I struggle to open the door. Every time I go to a building with even one step, I have to ask for a hand up it. Every time there's a ramp to get to a mailbox, I have to ask, could you please lend me a hand? Then if I drop a letter in a box, someone says, how wonderful. It's stuff like that. It's architectural barriers, and people aren't any bed of roses either when it comes to this disease. They ask questions, so forth. Yeah.
But let me ask you a question. Beyond the physical part of polio, is there a distinct realm psychologically, emotionally, personally?
Of course, they're all interlocked. And I have a poem I'd like to read when it's appropriate called For My Sister.
Sure. Well, it's a great place to start. Let's hear that beautiful poem.
Okay. I remember a dry, bright, earthly day. I walk across the threshold to you. It is far off. I cannot quite remember what it is to walk. But what propels me is the sense that this will be the last time there is an impending disease. My heart beats like a bird, like a caged bullet, straining at the gold prison wires. My body is heavy. It is a bright earthly day. There is only love. There is a threshold I've got to cross, and we shall rise like gleaned wheat in the night. But the fatigue overcomes me. The fatigue is too great. I cannot do it. I nearly swoon and fall at your feet, sister, oh, pale in a white summer dress. Forgive me, I never made it. They bore me away instead in a cot so narrow it could scarcely go down the stairs, too narrow for the men to negotiate, the winding stairs. They burned my things to clean the place of the trails of disease. I had you dig some earth from the nearest vacant lot, scoop it into a glass to give to my closest friend, by way of saying, I am moving, going. I do not know where, but I shall never return to this place again.
Wow, that's really a beautiful poem. Thank you.
Thanks.
So let's talk a little bit about that. You mentioned earlier a quote from this doctor in New Mexico. Do you want to share that quote? It was so interesting.
Okay. Well, she said, I think you have recovered because you have grieved and you have moved on.
Right. I think that I call yours recovering because you are allowing yourself to grieve and proceeding with your life. Does that feel right? Do you feel that you have grieved and proceeded?
It feels right and wrong. I definitely have proceeded, but along with me are memories which actually feed my creativity. They do not make me despair most of the time, but they turn into music. And that's where the gift of being creative comes in, that you go through grief and you don't deny it and say, well, that's done. Now I move on. No, you really don't have that much say. If you're creative, you internalize it. And if you're a poet, you verbalize it. If you're a composer, you try to compose it. Music, which is where I started as a kid during the war.
But so polio is a disease that feels very mysterious to a lot of people. It's kind of scary and dark and old and removed from current life. How do we deal with this sort of mystery?
Well, you once used the memorable phrase, Danielle, you rip the veil off the mysterious disease, polio. The last thing you do is turn away and deny it and say it happened long ago, forget it. As some people say, you take the veil off and you examine what happened to you, how it affected you. You try to explain to people, even in the medical field, I'm sorry to say, what it is and what it does. And I do a lot of education. Every day I have home care now that I'm older. And people say, oh, do you have feeling or is it just that you can't move? Well, you're a doctor. You know that it doesn't affect feeling, just movement, right?
Mhm.
Well, they say, what is it like? What does it do? And does it affect your brain? They even say. And I say, I hope not. A woman the other day said, you must be older than you look, which made me feel good and bad. I do look youthful. So things like that made me feel extinct, sort of. But it's daily education for people outside me and inside me. It's to cope with it and do get on with my life.
Right. You talked about the medical field not necessarily understanding or even remembering. I mean, most of the doctors today have never seen a case of polio. Um, does that ever make you feel betrayed by the
Oh,
medical profession?
absolutely. But then I felt betrayed by it ever since I was a kid.
Can you talk about that?
Sure. And I was in a state hospital for children. We had a kids ward of about 20 kids, and we developed a ward gang. So we spied on the nurses when they went out. But the doctors they'd stand at the foot of our bed, look at our cot, and say to the person beside them, nurse or other doctor, here's a child with two useless limbs. Here's a child with one useless limb. And so how that affected me was, oh my God. But I've had it 4 weeks ago, and treating it with the language useless is totally negative. So I feel misery. Where's your education? Where is your heart? Okay.
That's really a powerful indictment of the language that we use and the words that we use. I think probably not even noticing how we, or the doctors in that case, are using the terminology, how that would affect a patient. So you describe interesting sort of ward life that you managed to find some ways to make it tolerable, sometimes even fun. What was it like when you came home, kind of back to the real world?
I miss the kids in the ward
Really?
because children are very, very resilient. I was 12 years of age. I was a very active little girl, and I bonded with my cubicle mate. I don't know if you have it anymore. Do you have those, Danielle? Cubicles?
Cubicles or like shared rooms?
No, it's not a room at all. There's a
Share with the
long,
curtains.
long,
Yeah.
long room is the ward, and it's divided into 20 cubicles with a plastic wall in between.
Yeah, we used to have those open wards. We no longer do, but yes, we know what you're talking about.
Okay, so each child could see the child next to her in the same cubicle mate, and then a little way down the ward. And we had a lot of fun because the ambulatory kids could spy on the nurses' charts when they went out to smoke. And they had smoke, and they had a little more than smoke. One said, I seen something in there that looked like a beef eater that my father, I said, maybe that was beef eater's gin she was knocking back.
Oh,
Stuff like that. Yeah, but the best news was when an ambulatory child came to me and said, hey, Lynn, I have a real good tradesy for you. And that meant if I tell you a secret, you give me something. And she said, what do you got to give me? And I said, I have half a Hershey bar. She said, does it have nuts? And I said, yeah, it has nuts. She said, show it to me. And I showed her the Hershey bar, half eaten. She said, okay. Well, I said, okay, you go first. Oh, we go at the same time. And she said, you get to go home this weekend. I said,
wow.
what? I'd been half a year without being at home at all. And every kid who could went home for a weekend when she was well enough, because they're all girls, not what. And I said, that's fabulous. And so she took the Hershey bar and ran away laughing.
Wow. It's so interesting that you found this news out from one of your ward spies and not from the medical team.
Well, shortly a nurse came along, rustling in her proprietary gown and cap, and said, well, Strongin, because we were called by our last name, Ofri, Irkovich, Strongin. It was an infant military. I have something to tell you. Oh, I said, what's that? She said, you are going home this weekend. Do you feel well? Oh, I said, I can't believe it. I feel great. Actually, I had a sore throat. And it was coming down with the measles, but that's another story. So when I got home, I looked for the piano first. You love your cello. I love my piano. And I felt it's strange to be at home, but I could smell a chicken in the pot. And there's my little sister, and there's my mother. I had three of us women, or a trio. I could hardly hug my sister, but we stood by each other after a while, and she said, what was it like? Um, what was it like? And I couldn't find the words right then, but I rolled up to the piano and started playing, and I smiled and she smiled, and for the time being, that was what it was like.
Wow. So let's sort of fast forward to now. Thinking about those interim years, but really, how did you feel in terms of your, quote, physical limitations, unquote, with respect to society? Did you feel cast out from society, rejected, frustrated, resigned? How did you connect with the world you were back in?
Well, I didn't miss society at all because I didn't fit in ever. I was always on the edge. And I believe if you're not standing on the edge of a circle, you're taking up too much room. So I was an outside sort of kid. My mother had a technique, a talent for making it a magical world for her two daughters. So I felt I had a society in my mother, my sister, who became a great violinist and then violist. And somehow I didn't miss society. I never knew it very well. And I felt hugged and enfolded by my maternal family. So no, I didn't miss the outside. And there was so much struggle to learn to walk again, to transfer, to sit down with braces and with crutches, that I focused on that. I didn't think much of society.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about being on the edge, even before you had polio. You know, that's something that I hear from a lot of poets, writers, artists. And I wonder if someone is too much in the center of things, if you lose the perspective that would give you the creativity to be a keen observer.
That's a great comment. I do think that we lose sight of the forest for the trees, and that with age we gain perspective. You know that, I'm sure. I do. In childhood, you see things close up, but I began to back off when I was very young, and to listen to people and to think of myself as a little dot in the center of a circular playground. And this little dot that was me moved around. And I remember looking at the sky and thinking, will there ever be a time when the war is over? Because I was born in 39. So by 44, I was reading and fully conscious of who I was. I felt very much outside, but that I was looking at grown-ups killing and shooting on the Warner Pathé News. I was looking at other children, and I didn't think I was on the same page as they were. And I brought a lot of this home. But yeah, I felt somehow I was different. And one day, my mother leant close to me. I was about 6, and she said, you're not of this world. You're something else. I was
Why do you
scared.
think she said that?
I
What
think
clued her in?
because I started composing when I was 4, when I beat up piano under the chair, because I wasn't antisocial, but I also was quiet and observing, and maybe how I looked, I don't know. She was a painter, and she said, you look like a Dutch painter's dream of a girl. I thought, oh, and I looked at Vermeer and I thought, oh, but they're really pretty. That's not me. I think she saw me a little bit as different way before polio. And I think she really saw my core, which is a wonderful gift. If you're a mother of 3, if you could see to your child's core. I think she did see to who I was. And I was a lot different from most of the children we knew.
And can you describe how the war affected not just you as a person, obviously everyone was affected, but how it might have affected you as a creative person, as a poet, musician?
Well, yes, we had a house with a 2-octave beat up piano. And when I was very sad about anything, I didn't have a teddy bear. That was my go to comfort. I'd sit at the piano and improvise. I have perfect pitch. So I found middle C, and I'd play to myself the way a little child rocks himself, the way you hug a teddy bear or read when you can. I ran away from reality because it was all khaki and war, and comfort was in music.
And when did poetry develop?
Well, my mother read me Emily Dickinson when I was 4.5, and we lived in Florida on the beach because my father was a psychologist and I was being relocated. And she opened a green book with a cloth binding. I remember that green binding. And she read a poem that went, Dear March, come in. How glad I am. I looked for you before. And my baby sister had been born in March. And I said, Mother, is that why Martha was born in March? No, but there was something about Emily Dickinson's poetry that enchanted me. So poetry, along with music, went hand in hand from very, very early time.
Well, certainly, I mean, poetry is really song on a page, and song is poetry with music. So I can
Yeah.
see how they're related. Um, let's turn back to the idea of disability and creativity. I'm wondering how or even if the challenges of disability has affected your creativity.
There was very little else I could do but read and think and think. And what I loved best was music. So I couldn't play a piano in the hospital. I began to write little rhymes to myself, like I love to hear the wind howl in the middle of the night, little child rhymes. And I found comfort in that. And I always asked people to give me a pencil and pad of paper. And I wrote under the covers at night after the main light had been turned off. Yeah, I found that it was very easy, like turning a new page to go to poetry from music, because as you said, it is a form of music. The only instrument is your brain, and that was good enough for me.
You once said that creativity can temporarily erase disability. Do you feel a need to erase disability to be creative?
Um, I want to get out of it, you know what I mean? Like I wriggle to get out of a wheelchair or a hospital bed or anything. When I write, I seem to feel like I don't know what a bird feels like, but I feel I'm transcending it. I'm not denying it. And of course, it's always there, but I am out of it for a while because the music carries me instead of the wheels of a wheelchair. It was Vassar Miller, who had cerebral palsy, who had a book called If I Had Wheels or Love. Well, I did have both. I had wheels and I had love. But my special thing was I could write. And the first poem I ever wrote when I came home, my mother said, "Why don't you send it to Robert Frost?" I said, "What? Yeah? Stopping by what's this? That's my favorite poet." She said, "But that's just why." Um, okay, so she typed it up for me. I was lying on a sofa. We found his address was Ripton, Vermont, Homer Noble Farm. And I sent him the poem, and I heard from Robert Frost by return mail.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a door for the garbage and a door where we walked. So it was at the back door with all the other mail and stuff. Mother said, "You heard from Robert Frost." And the whole family, the three of us, Mother, Martha, and I, sat down on my bed and we read it. And we were, of course, overwhelmed. And he wrote by hand, cursive. And he said, when you say I am a quilt gently covering eternal rest, a metaphor for death, he said, you got it there to a poetic depth I shall remember." And
Wow.
basically, shall I tell you another open secret? And he
Well, I
spelled
just
secret, SECRIT.
typo. It's amazing that your mother had you shoot high. So that's a good lesson, shoot high. And did you save that letter? Do you still have it?
What do you mean? We have copies of it in the whole family.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a great first endorsement. You should put that on your book.
I don't
Um,
know, but we went to the old copy machines that were white print on black paper, sent it to my uncle in Montreal, sent it to other, it was a historic document even then. I
wow.
was I was in awe that I got that.
I think a lot of poets will be in awe. I actually want to dig a little deeper though. I mean, do you feel that disability's influence on creativity is a result of the disability itself or from society's reaction to that disability?
The first, I don't think it's from society's reaction. That could be more superficial, anger, I spit at this or that, but I go deeper. So it comes from inner self, and that's very affected, as you know, by the body and its limitation. So it doesn't come from society, it comes from within the individual who writes.
Right, but let's say, imagine society that does not notice disability, that treats disability like everything else, and there wasn't this big chasm. Would that change, your creative juices at all? Because society is really pushing disability to be an other, right, to be on the outside. And imagine that weren't the case. What do you think?
It's pretty hard to imagine that sort of utopia. But I think the force would stay the same within me, and it might have a different direction, be in the key of C major instead of G minor, something like that. Something else would drive me to write because the force is so strong. It's a life force. It's the blood jet is poetry, Sylvia Plath said. And I think my blood jet is poetry. So whether or not I was disabled, however society was, I would find other things that moved me. Because look, when I heard Emily Dickinson's poem, I was perfectly able-bodied, and I felt that same thrill and fast heartbeat that I do when I write today in my 80s. So no, I would go somewhere else with the talent. Um, and I wouldn't think about being disabled, but I would think about other things.
That's a really beautiful way to put it. You know, when we spoke earlier, you talked about creativity or erasing or temporarily erasing disability, but what's left, what's permanent is courage. And I was so taken by that. Now, I wondered if you could talk a bit about the role of courage in creativity.
Wow, that's hard. I mean, well, uh, there are two things that make for isolation. Being a writer is a very isolated profession, and being disabled is isolated. So both of them take a heartbeat, courage that is very strong. And you keep saying, I will overcome this, I will overcome that. You're not always able to, and you don't think of it as courage. When people say, aren't you brave? I know how I feel is, poo on that, I'm doing my life. Or aren't you brave? I don't want to be called that brave or that I have courage, but yes, it does take courage to live, and it takes courage to move on. So, but I can't explain courage.
But maybe distinguishing, you're right, from the outside observer, it can look like, oh, someone is, quote, brave to get their wheelchair over the,
Right.
curb. But what about courage and bravery to sort of tear open some of your heart and spill some of that blood onto the page? Can you talk about that kind of courage?
Well, I could try. It hurts. It takes a great deal of focus. I meditate before I open my page or computer. I always begin by reading someone else's poem, like Jane Kenyon or Emily Dickinson, Vassar Miller. I think you have to dig very deep, and sometimes I want to shout, stop, stop, but it says, no, go, go. And that I'm aware of as going into unknown territory, like a dark ward, and you don't know what the diagnosis will be, or into an unknown space in your life. That does take courage. And there is a price that I pay of exhaustion, and sometimes not tears, but just I hope I hope I did. I hope I received well what I was given to write. That's about it.
Sure. Now, most poets aren't also talented musicians and composers. Can you speak to the role of music for you in your poetry, or just the role of music in general in poetry?
Well, for me, as I said, it was starting composing, going to the Manhattan School of Music, realizing after 3 years it was not quite the thing for me, but that I still wanted to make music. I began to read the great poets at Hunter College, and I thought that's really where my heart beats, more than in the music I love best, more than in the Bach unaccompanied cello sonatas, which I know you're learning or trying to learn. Yeah, I somehow felt that in words I could get deeper to my humanity and be more specific. A movement of a sonata sounds sad. Well, I wanted to say something different. I know sad.
Mm.
I know sad, not sorrow. And then it's a different thing. It's a metaphor. Poetry uses language, which is our most human tool. Music is not. I love music, but I wanted to be closer to what the word can convey. More of that. That's what.
I believe you have a poem called I Know Sad. If that's handy, I'd love you to read it. But I even want to ask you one more question about music and poetry, because so much of what makes a poem feel successful is rhythm and
Right.
in essence, the sense of a song. And how do you think about rhythm, or how does it play when you have all these emotions? You've lanced a little bit into a vein, you're pouring out the emotions, but you can't just have a blob on the page of emotions. And how does rhythmic structure help you organize those emotions into something that can be then received in this both powerful but also beautiful way by the audience?
That's a great question. I read my lines aloud as I write them. I read them to myself, whether they're iambic, pentameter, 5 beats to a line or 4 beats. And after I've written the whole poem, I read it aloud and I listen for the 3 elements of music, which are, that melody, harmony, and rhythm. And if it, I beat it out with my hand like a conductor. Also, Robert Duncan, the wonderful poet whom I knew, always conducted when he read his poems. And people thought it was sort of, eccentric. It was a bit unusual, but it gave me a sense of the rhythm. And we had meetings with Robert Duncan in San Francisco for a few wonderful years. And he'd always begin, I know the color of the sparrow. Not I know the color of the sparrow, or I know the color of the sparrow. He would give us a great sense of rhythm. I don't have I know sad right in front of me.
Well, I
I
have it. Would you like me to
You
read it?
do?
Yes.
Oh, do you want to put it up on screen or do you want to read
Yep,
it?
I'll read it for you.
Yeah.
I know sad. It comes and goes. We cannot sleep under tents, parched, starving. I don't understand it, but it seems to have its own timing and one must accept it. In Prettyville, Mississippi, in Kabul, I have known sad, held its face in my hands. Chloe, heart-shaped, kissed its lips. Bayou flowers bloomed and a child drowned. It begins to feel like a life in an iron lung, only I have no circle cut into my windpipe to let the requiem sound.
You read it well.
I
I
hope I
hear
did it some justice.
you got the music. How did you find it? You just
Oh, I dug it up. I knew it was an email that you sent. So I dug it up while you were talking. Um, let's talk about what you're working on now. Maybe you can talk about Kiosk, your latest book, how that came together.
well, it I write often of enclosures. I told you about music being an enclosure. I grew up in New York City. I spent a lot of time in Central Park, and I was always intrigued by the old kiosks. When you know what they are, and for people who don't, they're little, not tents, but wooden structures where a person sells newspaper, chewing gum, stuff like a corner store. They seem to be very mysterious and out of Europe. And my background is Romanian and Ukrainian. So I saw myself fitting. I imagined myself as an old woman who had lived her whole life, isolation again, in a kiosk in New York. And she grew old in it. She talks about the people, about the snow and the rain and the wind and the customers. Slowly she knows she's dying, and somehow her kiosk will become her tomb, like cradle to grave. So I was very thrilled that an English publisher got it, because I think these are weird, far out poems. Will anyone get it? But Alan Corkish in Great Britain did get it and did publish them. So I am happy to have them out there. Now they have a life of their own. My child's birth, now it can go forth. And I feel great that it's out. I just hope people read it. That's about it.
Well, bravo, getting a collection published is no small thing. So just note to the
Oh.
audience, if you haven't gotten your copy of Kiosk, the link will be posted for you to pick up your copy. What are you working on now?
Well, I'm working on poems that are modern sonnets, and they're all 11 lines instead of 14. So 3 triplets and 1 couplet. I love numbers, and that mystical number 3332 11, it works for me. And maybe I have to get out of it. But of course, I am very concerned and grieved by what's going on in the world. The poem you just read, I know, sad, talks about Kabul. It seems I have to internalize what's happening. So my poems touch on that. Yeah, that's been for about the past 2 years, for the past year and a half. They're not war poems. They're sometimes love poems. But there's one little poem called Talent that I'd love to read you if we
Sure.
have time. And this is
Yes.
in a book called Dovey and Me, about an old woman in a sand hut living with her lover who was unnamed. Talent. Talent, you never quit on me. Dovey might. Then what? I'd scour the sides of the universe, that old kettle, and toss the scouring pad away. We bear in isolation more than human. This windswept hut is no prison, but the deepest reality I've known. At midnight, wind combs Dovey's hair. Is she sleeping or pretending? Dreamer, she's dreaming. Maybe she is making bread and Mexican. Maybe she's back in Europe, having seen a home torched. I am around 12. I begin writing, knowing this will never let go of me. Talent is the bird, even more than Dovey, has her claws in.
Wow. Thank you. I invite the audience to put your questions in the chat in the Q&A section so we can get to those. I was wondering, Lynn, what advice do you give to people starting out as poets, new writers, people just turning to poetry now? What do you tell them?
I'd say read, read, read. Read the poets you love. Get hold of all the books you can, especially in poetry. And start with early, if you can, and read Shakespeare's sonnets. They're terrific. They're modern. The songs from his plays, and then move forward and try to read all the poets you can get your hands on. Talk to other poets, form a small community, whatever, gay poets, straight poets, black, but just a lot of poets, and talk with them about your poetry and believe in yourself. If it's so strong that you have to do it, there's something that can't be stopped and has its claws in. And if it's not that strong, it'll just drop off and wither away, and you'll lead another life. It has to be a life force. Read and read a lot of other poets, and that's about it.
Well, that's a great piece of advice. And why do you think, some people are attracted to poetry? I mean, everyone's a writer, but some people are particularly attracted to poetry, which is very circumscript, but different from writing fiction, writing a novel, writing essays. Can you talk about that?
Well, it's more condensed and more intense, for one thing. I could again compare it to music, but I would say instead of a symphony, it could be a sonata or a Bach prelude and fugue. It seems to focus so strongly on emotion. And again, it's words, not written notes. You can speak it. I think you're drawn to it because you're a person who lives close to deep feeling a lot of the time. And a novel won't do, at least not for me, or a biography or an auto. I looked at all the other forms. I've written short stories. I enjoy them, but poetry is really the soul of it all. Yeah, love for rhythm and melody and the way it sounds, and it feels right. Like, I know sad. You say it to anyone in any language, and they understand what that means.
Right, right. I look at poetry as really the sort of the condensed version, where you really you get rid of all the extraneous things, plot, character, oh yeah, all these things, and
Mhm.
just condense it down to that, little kind of morsel of where the emotion is, which is why it's both powerful but also intimidating. For many people, find poetry intimidating to start. to approach. I was impressed, over in the pandemic, during the pandemic, that poetry kind of really flourished. And partly because it's short, one can post an entire poem, on social media, which is hard to do with a more full-length piece. And it was really interesting to see poems getting passed around. It made me think of samizdat, in the Soviet times when you couldn't publish your work, people would pass around samizdat, pretty much copied or handwritten versions would just go hand to hand in people's kitchens to read, and passing the poems along on social media felt like this kind of, urban digital samizdat. We just, share them around, and there was such an appetite for getting these.
I love that. I know why it's intimidating. People shy away from deep emotion. It looks different on the page. But during the terrible wars that are going on even now, poetry is being spread. Osip Mandelstam, hid his poems in a frying pan under another layer of metal, and his wife, Nasteta, escaped with the poems in a frying pan. And that's why we have a lot of Mandelstam's terrific poetry today.
Wow, that's a great story. And there's so many stories of poems being hidden. I guess they can be written. I think particularly many people who are incarcerated, often with limited writing utensils, often poetry is a place something you can write that's small. You can do it on, one sheet of paper. It's fascinating. It's funny because Bellevue Literary Review, we actually receive quite a few submissions from people who are incarcerated, and it's often poetry, short, intense, and there's a certain amount of freedom in writing that, for people who don't have freedom where they are at the moment, and there are many people in the world who don't. Poetry can be this way, and in a way, I think a little bit about someone who is disabled, or say hospitalized or unable to walk, or quote confined someplace. It's hard to get your freedom, but poetry in your mind, can give you that freedom, and it's really hard to take that away.
It is hard to, and I love Bellevue Literary Review. I think it's wonderful, and I want to collect all the copies. When I win the next award, I will. I would love to get in it. It's true. In a smaller space, we feel safer, and we can write even on our body. We can write, in ballpoint. The back of menus, poems have been written. There are also in a matchbook stories. You're spot on. And of course, incarcerated, we make a freedom, and that's the wonderful power of the mind. I think and it's heartbreaking too right now. In the Middle East and in Ukraine, there still is art. There still are some theaters, and yeah, that's a huge heartbreak. Just you feel there are no words. Then you go to sleep, and suddenly in the middle of the night, you feel, but I have one word, and you write it down. I can't go there, you think. And then you say, but I must. And you go there. And if you're blessed or lucky, you get a poem or a song. And that's, yeah.
Well, I think that is a beautiful note on which to end, because I think you really identified where that courage comes from. And I want to thank you, Lynn Strongin, for sharing your insights and your poetry, and thank the Charter for Compassion for having us here today. Lynn is right. The Bellevue Literary Review is wonderful. Here are all the issues back here, and you can subscribe, blreview.org, if you want a copy. And we're happy to take questions. You can also send in your questions later. And thank you, Philippe, for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for this incredible conversation. So there are a couple of questions here. This was asked almost at the beginning. There was this phrase that Lynn mentioned: if you're not standing on the edge of the circle, you're taking up too much room. And the question that comes with that is, have you written a poem with this image in it?
I don't think I have. I think it's encapsulated in a poem, but no, I never used that exact image. So I would say, no, I haven't used it in a poem.
Not
Perfect.
yet. Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any advice for where to start with getting a poem published?
Oh, right. That's hard. I love the little magazines in your region. If you know someone who publishes a broadsheet, any interest in getting word out, start close to home, start small, because you're not going to make it big for a long time, and then move ahead to the ones you love best, and even try something like Bellevue, which is terrific, or try, like Mother said, try Robert Frost. You can't do it today. But start with a group of people you know who love poetry, or someone who is publishing a new journal. That's how I began in Berkeley. So
Yeah, and I'll add to that as an editor. We read thousands and thousands of poems every year, and obviously we wish we could publish them all, but we can't. I would suggest subscribing to a few literary magazines. The great poet Edward Hirsch said, literary magazines tell you the news. They, are where the new poets are happening, the new voices before they become Robert Frost or Amanda Gorman. They are publishing in small literary magazines, and there are many, many of them. BLR is just one, which of course I recommend, but I wouldn't say we're the only one. Subscribe to a few, 2 or 3 of them. I mean, partly as a community service, right? If you as a writer want these literary journals to exist to publish you, someone's got to be subscribing and supporting them. So you want to keep that literary ecosystem afloat so that it will be there for you. But also you get to see the news, you get to see what's being written, what are the styles and I would advise you, before you just submit your poem everywhere, do read either on the copy or on the website what kind of poems these journals publish. Because if you send in poems that aren't their style, if they say, word limit X amount of words or page limit, and you send in something that's twice as big, you're wasting your time and their time. Or, so do a little bit of research, and don't just randomly, send it off to 1,000 places, because it's a big time investment for everyone, and you should be thoughtful about where you send your stuff.
yes, absolutely.
Great answer. So now we also have a couple questions on Facebook. So the first one is, what are you reading currently, if you are? Do you have anything that you're reading at the moment, Lynn?
I'm reading so many things. I'm looking at this desk. I love medical writing. I love your books, Danielle. And of course, I'm thrilled to be doing this. And I was very anxious about it, but it's fun. There's a book by Sigrid Nunez called The Vulnerables. And it's hard to write, to encapsulate it. But I suggest that book, The Vulnerables by Nunez. And then Simon Schama has a new book out, and I loved Oliver Sacks, who you interviewed, Danielle. It was terrific. Simon Schama has a book called Foreign Bodies. It's about the pandemics, vaccines, and the health of nations. And he's a brilliant art critic. You may have seen his art films. He lives in Great Britain. I'm reading these 2 books. They're way far from poetry, so they're kind of a release. And finally, I want to tell you, yes, I have the Oliver Sacks. I want to tell you about a new, not new at all, about Amanda, and her last name is Ward, I'm sorry, Jessamine Ward, an American Black writer who has written extensively about poor people living where she grew up in Mississippi, wrote a gorgeous eulogy for her husband, which appeared either in the New York Times or the Atlantic, a very literary place. Yeah, her voice is moving and her writing is gorgeous. So those 3 things I'm reading with Simon Schama, and especially the new fiction by Jessamine Ward. It's beautiful stuff, and it's poetry. That's the other thing. For me, the best prose is able to be seen and read in portions as poetry. Yeah, I'd go for that.
If you read Jessamine Ward's most famous book, Seeing Unburied Seeing, it really is quite poetic. And I just actually re-picked up Saturday by Ian McEwan, which I love because it's both literary, it's about medicine, and it's about poetry all together, all in one day. And if you haven't read that, it's really a treat.
Wow, you like his writing.
Love it.
That's
Enviably.
What else are you reading?
Well, so I just read Abraham Verghese's book, The Covenant of Water. I just read that book, and I was looking back over 100 Years of Solitude by Garcia Marquez, which is
Yes.
just a great book to dip back into.
Have you read the Musicophilia by Oliver Sacks?
Yes, I have.
Okay, right.
Love it.
We're on the same page in music terms, I think. Yeah, it's
Thank
great.
you. Sorry, keep going on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Now I think
Nope.
we're done. Any more questions?
Oh, yes. So there was a couple more questions. One of them was, I'm kind of like trying to rephrase this. So it says something about, this person is sure that you have had multiple different things or people that have inspired you in different times of your career. Is there one specific that has probably stayed steadily there as an inspiration throughout your writing?
Is that for me, the
Yes,
question?
for you.
Oh, no. There are just too many. There's so much talent, it overflows. So I don't have one.
And I would say, why limit yourself? And I think Lynn's point of reading widely and read things that you might not have picked up because you don't know where the inspiration will come from. And so trying out different writers, and again, literary magazines are a great way to get a smorgasbord of writers, things you might not have bought this person's book, but oh, hey, there are poems in this issue. And you'll find a lot. I mean, I find even just reading the slush pile or thousands and thousands of submissions, even from the ones we don't publish, I learn so much. I get inspired even by a piece that isn't fully formed, but there are beautiful ideas or styles. And oh, hey, I'm gonna try that next time. So the wider you read, the more inspiration you'll get, and have as many icons and influencers as you want.
As a poet, I find that a relief for being rejected. That some part of it moved you, or
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, that's good.
Wonderful. So I think that is it for the questions on social media as well. Thank you both once again for taking the time to share the space with all of us and to inspire not only the people that are watching currently, but also the people that will be watching this recording on our YouTube channel. So with that, I wanted to let people know that the next course with the Charter Education Institute is starting this next Monday, November 13th, with Rick Hansen. It's the course is called Just 1 Minute, 57 Practices to Build a Happier, Healthier Mind in Just a Minute or Two a Day. And if you use the code with the Charter CFC10, you get a 10% discount. So that course begins this Monday for 5 weeks. We also have our EdNet forum with Scarlett Lewis. And the Choose Love Foundation. Scarlett Lewis is the mother of a kid that was killed in one of the Sandy Hook mass shooting. And so she started this organization in his honor. And she was also a humanitarian awardee of the Charter for Compassion this year at the Parliament of World Religions. So registration is open, and that is on Thursday, November 16th. At 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. And this Saturday, we have Global Read for Kids and Company at 9 a.m. And this is with the book Wisdom Tales from Africa. And we'll have the facilitator Moses Machipisa and Bellevue, who are both part of our board of directors of the Charter for Compassion. And Magdalene is going to be the author. I mean, the author is going to be presenting us all just like this format, but on Saturday morning. And don't not forget that we also have at the last Saturday of the month, we have our Charter Sangha, and this time is going to be on the 25th at 9 a.m. Pacific. This is a time for people to gather, meditate, take times, and share. It's a very awesome space for people to connect with others as well. And so with that, I want to thank you both and everybody else that is watching. I appreciate the time that you took to share with us all the things that you have shared on this in this global read once again. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye-bye.